Well, Heat Nation, I think that it's time that we finally raise the white flag. Oh, no, the other white flag. Yeah, that's more like it because the Heat suck right now. So maybe it's time that we actually finally tank.
Straighten up there, soldier. You don't look like you were enjoying that loss.
That's right, Tobin. I'm not enjoying these losses because things are so miserable right now. You look at the Golden State Warriors. They're 11-2 in the Jimmy Butler era. Meanwhile, the Miami Heat are 4-10. Listen, I was going to record this tank video after the Cavs game a couple days ago, and I'm actually glad that I waited because somehow things have gotten worse. They've reached another rock bottom, which I said in my post-game video yesterday. How do you reach rock bottom 17 times in a season? There's only supposed to be one bottom. But somehow this Heat team keeps digging deeper and deeper. Because after that Cavs game, of course, they lost to the Timberwolves. And then just yesterday, you blew an 11-point fourth quarter lead at home to a terrible Bulls team when you were at full strength and the Bulls were missing like half of their starting unit. It truly the worst loss of the season. But saying whether the Heat should tank or not is actually a lot more complicated than just saying, yeah, we suck right now, because there is a lot of other draft implications, and truthfully, it might not even be possible to tank. So that's what I want to discuss in today's video. And I want to start by talking about the draft lottery and how it's affected by the NBA play-in, because the rules are kind of confusing. So in this article that I found, you can pause and read it if you want. But basically what it's saying is that the draft lottery, or the draft order, is determined based off the regular season. So if the team in 7 falls to 8, that doesn't change anything. If the team that's in 9 falls to 10, that doesn't change anything either. But if a team that was originally supposed to be in the playoffs falls out, or if a team that was originally out of the playoffs goes in, that is where the draft order is affected. So basically, if a team that was 9 or 10 in the lottery wins 2 play-in games, they now jump into the playoffs and jump out of the lottery. Where if a team that's in 7 or 8 who is currently in the playoffs, if they lose both play-in games, they now jump out of the playoffs and jump into the lottery. So there is no miracle scenario where the Heat finish 9 or 10, win both play-in games, and then make the playoffs and keep their draft pick. That's just not possible. But now we got to look at the standings, where the Miami Heat are currently in 9th place at 29-34. And the first thing I want to point out is I don't think they can catch the Detroit Pistons, because they're now 5 games back of the Pistons in the loss column, and I know they have the tiebreaker against us, so it's really like we're 6 back. So any chance of jumping up out of the play-in is just not possible at this point. Which, imagine if I told you this a year ago, said the phrase that the Heat can't catch the Detroit Pistons. Oh, just what a miserable timeline we're in. But right now at 7, you got the Hawks at 34 losses, so they're tied with the Heat in the loss column. And then the Magic at 35, so they actually have one more loss than the Heat. But unfortunately, I believe both of those teams also have the tiebreaker versus the Heat, because I remember losing to them several times, including the 22-point blown fourth quarter lead to the Orlando Magic, including a loss to the Hawks just the other day. It really is pitiful to think about, because the Magic are a team that have dealt with so many injuries this year. Jalen Suggs is now out for the year. The Hawks were sellers at the deadline. They got rid of Bogdan Bogdanovic. They lost Jalen Johnson to the season. But the Miami Heat are sitting here currently still both under those teams. Now, of course, they can catch them because they are pretty close in the standings. But I'm not sure the Bulls can catch them. The Bulls are now at 10, and they are 4 games back in the loss column. It does sound ridiculous to say that the Bulls can't catch us, considering we just saw them beat us twice, including last night. But regardless, that team is no good. It kind of seems like they're mailing it in, not playing Lonzo and Vucevic. So I'm not quite sure they can catch us, but fine. Even if you want to say that they can, being 4 games back, I don't think the Heat could fall to 11, which would mean that they're out of the play-in tournament completely, because underneath the Bulls are the 76ers, who are 6 games back in the loss. No, 7 games. Wow, 7 games back in the loss column from the Miami Heat, which is stunning. Like, again, if I told you this a year ago, that the Sixers would be on 20 games under 500, I would have never believed you. Now, I didn't think that team was any good. I mean, y'all know I don't like Embiid. Playoff P. They got a couple of the biggest playoff chokers in NBA history. But I didn't think they'd be this bad a regular season team. And of course, they are definitely trying to tank now. They shut down Joel Embiid for the rest of the season. So all of this to say, I think the Heat are guaranteed to be in the play-in, whether it's from 7 to 10, they're pretty much locked in that spot. Now, if you're one of the Heat fans that wants to make the playoffs, of course you would rather be 7 or 8 because you only have to win one of 2 games. If the Heat were 9 or 10, you'd have to win both games. You'd have to win 2 straight games to make the playoffs. And just based off the teams that are here, I don't know. I could see the Heat losing 2 games. I could see them winning the first game. Who the hell knows? I mean, if the Heat were 9 and 10, 9-10 with the Bulls, it'd be our 3rd straight year playing the Bulls. We beat them 2 years prior. We could probably do it again. Then you'd like to believe they could beat a Hawks team or a Magic team, but the truth of the matter is, with this Heat team, you just can't guarantee a win versus anybody. They're gonna finish 7 through 10, and I just say, hey, let fate take the wheel, whether we decide or whether we make the playoffs or not. But now what I did want to do is I wanted to pull up Tankathon, which shows the current draft order if the season ended today. And you see right here, the Miami Heat are slotted at 11th, which gives them a 1.8% chance at the first overall pick and an 8.5% chance at being top 4. And I want to note too, if you look at the first few teams that are out of the lottery here, it's the Magic and it's the Hawks. So a couple of teams that could flip positions with the Heat by the time that the season ends. But a lot of Heat fans will look at this and say, hey, what's the point of finishing 11 and getting a 1.8% chance at the top pick? I'd rather make the playoffs. Maybe you beat the Cavaliers. I don't know. The Heat have beat them this year. We almost beat them. We had a moral victory versus them a year ago. Maybe some Heat fans would want to make the playoffs over a small chance of jumping into the top 4 just because you get some valuable experience for the young guys. And playoff basketball is fun. I'm not going to lie to you. I do get that. But to counter that point, it's happened before where a team has had that smaller percentage and jumped into the first overall pick. It had ramifications for the Heat. Go back to 2008 where the Chicago Bulls had a 1.7% chance to land the number 1 spot and get Derrick Rose. The Heat were supposed to get D Rose. We were the worst team in the league the year prior. But of course the Bulls jumped us and he ended up getting Michael Beasley. Look at the Cavaliers, who got really lucky multiple times. Back in 2014, they had a 1.7% chance to jump up and get Andrew Wiggins. They won the lottery. Same thing with Kyrie Irving. They had a 2.8% chance to jump up to 1. They did it. They got Kyrie Irving. And it's very interesting to think about just how history would have played out if the Cavs didn't win both of those lotteries. You talk about a 1.7% chance at Wiggins, which they flipped for Kevin Love. 2.8% chance to get Kyrie, which was part of the big 3 with LeBron and Love that won them the championship. It's just crazy how the butterfly effect can kind of play out with this draft lottery stuff, but we'll get into that a little bit later. I also want to note now that according to Tankathon, the Heat have the 6th easiest remaining schedule in the league. Their opponents for the rest of the season have an average of about a 47% winning percentage, so under 500. Now, I do want to note that a couple of teams with some easier schedules than the Heat are the 76ers and the Atlanta Hawks, so some teams that, might affect Miami's playoff positioning. But in theory, if you wanted to tank, this playoff or this strength of schedule should make it more difficult because you do have a lot of easier opponents coming up relative to the rest of the league. But really, that doesn't matter because, like I just said, the Heat just lost to a stinky Bulls team yesterday, and we play the Charlotte Hornets on Monday, and no way they lose to the Hornets, right? There's no way. I don't know. You can't say that with this team anymore. But let's go ahead and look at some of these top prospects. According to Tankathon, these are the top 5 that they got. Of course, most people are familiar with Cooper Flagg, the 6'9" small forward, power forward from Duke. 20 points per game, almost 8 boards, 4 assists, 1.2 blocks, 1.6 steals. He's a guy that very clearly would be amazing in this Heat system. I mean, I've seen pro comps for him like Scottie Pippen, Andrew Karolinko, Paolo Banchero. So obviously you got a couple of elite defenders in there. Banchero, who's just kind of an all-around future superstar. Putting a guy like that in the front court next to Bam and Ware, oh my God, that trio would be godly. Flagg can also stretch the floor a little bit, 38% on 4 attempts from 3. I've even seen it like ESPN. They have him listed at guard, a 6'9" guard on some of these websites. So he's just an overall defensive menace, which is something that the Heat need, and can provide that scoring punch to help Bam Adebayo and Tyler Hero obviously he'd be great here. Now, the number 2 guy that they got, Dylan Harper, is someone a lot of Heat fans think might actually be the better fit. He's a 6'6" point guard, shooting guard from Rutgers, getting about 19 points per game, 4 boards, 4 assists. Some pro comps for him, which I love, is Cade Cunningham. I saw Jalen Brunson, Kobe White, which I don't love as much, although he's obviously a good player. But getting a guy like Cade Cunningham next to Tyler Hero in the backcourt just makes a ton of sense. Obviously, Dylan Harper's got some great size at 6'6". Not a great three-point shooter. Truthfully, none of these 5 guys are. He's only 35% on 5 attempts. But I don't watch a lot of college basketball, so I don't want to read into the numbers too much. This guy is mocked, 2 or 3 in every single draft. So I'm sure he's a good player. Same goes for Ace Bailey, who also plays for Rutgers. Now, again, like I said, I don't watch a lot of college basketball, but to me, I don't see how Rutgers can have the 2nd and 3rd best prospect in the draft and their team sucks, because they're currently under 500, I believe. So to me, that's a red flag, but I don't actually watch these guys play. Not yet, at least. It's March 9th, so tournament's going to be kicking off soon, and I will be tuned in. Even though I'm not even sure Rutgers will make the tournament, I guess. I just said they're under 500, so maybe I might not even get to watch them. But anyways, Ace Bailey is a guy that certainly looks like he has a lot of potential, being that he's a 6'10" small forward, averaging 18 points per game, 7 rebounds, only 1 assist, which I don't love. But I do like his player comps of Brandon Miller and Paul George, who are obviously guys that would fit very nicely at the starting small forward for the Miami Heat. He's also 35% from 3 on 8 attempts. And then the 4th guy I've heard a lot about as well, VJ Edgecombe out of Baylor. He's pretty much the consensus number 4 pick. He's a 6'5" shooting guard, averaging 15 points per game, 5 boards, 3 assists. His player comps just are super athletic freaks. I saw Russell Westbrook. I saw Shaedon Sharpe. I saw Victor Oladipo. Obviously, getting a guy of their skill sets would fit great, in this backcourt. You would think he has the potential to be a defensive menace if he is like a Victor Oladipo, a great two-way player, or a great playmaker like Russell Westbrook. Obviously, those are things that he could use, and he is 36% from 3 on 5 attempts. And then the last guy here, I've seen this guy, Kasparas Jakuncius, whatever. I've seen him ranked anywhere from 5 to 20, so I don't even want to read his numbers out. And his player comp was Spencer Dinwiddie, so who the hell cares? But regardless, there's a lot of top prospects in this draft that might fall to the middle, late first round, just because I've heard that if this was any other draft, Dylan Harper could go 1. Ace Bailey could go number 1. So obviously, when you have so many potential or number 1 level picks, it does drop a lot of other great players a little bit later in the draft where the Heat could get some good value there. But we'll have plenty of time this offseason to talk about all the draft prospects and get everyone their own individual videos like we did last year. That was very fun to learn about a lot of the players. And at that time, we'll actually know where the Heat pick, because maybe the Heat have 2 first-round picks this year. Of course, they have the Golden State Warriors pick from the Jimmy Butler trade, which is top 10 protected. As of right now, that pick is at 20. We were hoping that it would finish somewhere 11 to 14 to still be in the lottery, but the Warriors are so damn good now. They jumped the Mavericks, who obviously are going to be terrible the rest of the season. So I don't really anticipate that Warriors pick being any higher than it is now. It'll probably be somewhere in the range of 20 or up, which the Heat can still draft a good player there. Of course, they draft well. That's where around the range we got Nikola Jovic. So there is potential with that pick. And then obviously the Heat's pick, as we've said, is lottery protected. If not, it goes to the Oklahoma City Thunder, meaning if the Heat were to make the playoffs, the Thunder would get that pick. Now, there are some other ramifications that get a bit confusing. I spent some time trying to understand this graphic from Spotrac. If y'all want to understand it yourselves, you can, but I'm not even going to spend the time to try to explain it and confuse everyone, because it's basically like if the Heat get their draft pick this year, then they send it to the Thunder unprotected next year, which is dangerous, because let's say the Heat miss the playoffs this year, they get their draft pick. Now the Thunder have our 2026 unprotected. If that pick wins the lottery, now the Heat missed out on the top pick in the draft, and you're giving the Thunder the number 1 pick to get that monster out of BYU that everyone's talking about. You might as well not watch NBA no more if the Thunder get the first pick in the draft next year. But anyways, that could happen. It also has some implications on a pick to the Charlotte Hornets in 2027 because of all these protections and the Stepien rule. And there's no point in even trying to understand it all now, because we will figure out soon enough exactly where the Miami Heat pick. So all of that being said, should the Miami Heat tank? And my answer to that is no. I mean, for a few reasons. One, I think it's impossible to really tank. At the end of the day, the guys that you put out there on the court are going to try to win. They are playing for contracts. They don't care who's going to be on the team next year because they might not be here next year. So the actual players aren't going to try to tank. We know the Miami Heat definitely are not going to try to tank. They don't have that in their DNA. And even outside of all of that, I don't believe in messing with the basketball gods. We've talked many times about that last game of the 2003 season where the Heat lost to the Toronto Raptors. Both teams had the same record. The loser got the number 4 pick in the draft and the right to draft Chris Bosh. And of course, the Heat ended up winning that game. So I pulled up the box score this time because we've talked about this legendary game so much. You can see the Heat got a 4-point win. The Heat finished that season 25-57. The Raptors 24-57. For some reason, they played one last game. I don't know why. But look at the guys on the Heat. You got Malik Allen. Shout out to Coach, man. You also got Caron Butler, another coach. Rasul Butler, RIP to the legend, man. Led the Heat that game with 19 points. Brian Grant only played 7 minutes. So maybe the Heat were trying to tank, which is why they didn't play Grant too much. But you also see Eddie House on the bench. Shout out to Heat legend Eddie House. And then on the Raptors side of things, Heat legend, Skip to my Lou, Rafael Alston. So some pretty fun names to look at there. But what I also want to know is look at the regular season series on the right. The Heat beat the Raptors all 4 games that series. So it's just crazy to think that if the Heat would have lost any of those, we would have had the 4th pick in the draft, and it's been widely reported that the Pat Riley wanted to take Chris Bosh. And obviously it worked out pretty well for us. So that just goes to show, don't mess with the basketball gods. Everything happens for a reason, which is what I've been telling myself to stay sane during these miserable times. I mean, look at the most infamous tanking team of all time, the Trust the Process 76ers, which started a decade ago, and they still have not been out of the second round since. Don't mess with the basketball gods, man. The butterfly effect is a crazy thing. We talked about the Cavaliers getting Wiggins and Kyrie Irving. Look at the Miami Heat getting Michael Beasley. If I could go back in time and make it so the Heat win that lottery, I wouldn't. Because maybe the Heat win the lottery as they were supposed to. They draft Derrick Rose. They have to pay Derrick Rose now. Now they can't afford to get LeBron James or Chris Bosh. And who knows? What we do know is the Heat ended up getting Michael Beasley. They let him walk. And they were able to sign Chris Bosh and LeBron James, getting probably the greatest team in Miami sports history, winning 2 championships. And I would not change that for anything. So everything happens for a reason. I do not believe in tanking, I guess to say. Now, that being said, because the Heat are locked into the play-in tournament 7-10, the regular season doesn't matter. The rest of it is kind of irrelevant with regards to wins and losses. So why not prioritize the young guys? Why not play Khalil Ware in the 4th quarter, which would probably lead to more wins because Spoelstra's been running this lineup of Davion, Terry, Tyler with Wiggins at the 4 to close these games. It makes no sense to me. Khalil Ware's been playing amazing in the first 3 quarters. Play him in the 4th quarter. And if you don't trust him, let him get his lumps out there. Let him learn. Let him make mistakes. This is an invaluable time to develop these guys. Pelle Larsson, he's played well in spots. Play him more. Why not play Keshad Johnson? He's sitting at the end of the bench. He's not learning nothing sitting there. Sure, he's watching, I guess, a little bit, but let him play. Let him make mistakes. Play Isaiah Stevens. Maybe he sucks. We don't know. I don't think Isaiah Stevens sucks. I like him, but obviously this team needs someone of his skill set. Why not just throw him out there and just see if he can perform? And if not, at the end of the day, he's getting experience. A guy like Keshad Johnson is no longer a 2-way player. He's on a standard deal, which if he turns into a decent rotation player, that's a great value contract. And by not even playing him on the first year of that contract, they're just wasting an opportune time to get the most out of that value. That's all I got to say. But anyways, let me know your thoughts down below. The question is very simple today. Should the Miami Heat tank? Let me know down below. I'm very curious to hear what y'all think. Make sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe, because all the support is greatly appreciated. And if the Heat lose to the Hornets tomorrow, I might remake this video again. We'll see. Peace out, y'all.
Pull up in the city trying to get that dead face. Do it on my own, I don't need no dead weight. Had to kill him off, yeah, I need a head space. You know this homegrown bitch don't offend me.